Hello everyone, AmyR here with her scratchy / sultry voice. That's what people are calling it now. I think y'all are crazy. Anyway, my cards for today use some Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous sets that I have not used in forever. Namely the Crazy Cats, the Crazy Dogs, and the Bird Crazy set, along with the newer Pumpkinhead stamp set that I showed in a haul video months ago. I think it was a couple months ago. I've been wanting to use these, and this week's Color Throwdown Challenge was perfect for it. So I have some Canson XL watercolor paper that I had die cut with one of the My Favorite Things inside and out stitched square Stax Die-Namics. Say that 3 times fast, especially when you have a scratchy voice. And I'm doing something a little different. I used my anti-static powder tool, and then I've stamped the images with VersaFine ONYX black ink. You could just leave the images, just stamp them VersaFine ONYX black. This ink is great with watercolor and all that kind of stuff. But I really wanted to heat emboss these. So I'm using Avery Elle's new detail black embossing powder. And I have made it very clear, I don't like working with black embossing powder. It tends to make a mess. But I really love how it looked on here. And yes, people have mentioned, like, why don't you stamp with VersaFine and emboss it with clear? I honestly do not like the look of clear embossing powder over black. It's just a weird little quirk I have. I can tell the difference and I really don't like it. But using the black embossing powder on this, you can see, like, stamping these images, they look fine. But you add that black embossing powder and it just deepens it and makes it pop. And then you melt it with a heat tool and you've got that black glossy image, and I just love it. So I did that with all of these. I had paired up the pumpkins I wanted to use with the characters I wanted to use, and I just love how these crazy work. Like, they have like that, they already have a spooked look on them, so it just worked. So after I had heat embossed everything, I didn't bother taping any of these down, and I'm just going in with a watercolor brush, and I have my little white Art Impressions plastic palette here, and a very simple palette of colors, because this week's Color Throwdown Challenge was orange, gray, and black. Very Halloween and perfect for these images. So I kept everything very simple. So for the first one, I did the ground first because I wanted to see how it would look. The Pumpkinhead set, all the little pumpkins have their own little, like, the scratchy ground image on them. Whereas all the Crazy Animal sets don't. So they look a little different. So I was worried I might have to draw in the ground to make everything work. But I realized once I had painted in the ground with the black soot distress ink, it didn't, like, everything just went together. So with this one, I kind of did the ground first, then watercolored the images, and then added a little bit of pumice stone to the background. And then realized after I did that it was easier to do the background first and then do everything else. So that's also why I heat emboss the images, though, because distress inks, while they're awesome for watercolor, I love how they react with water. They are very reactive with water. So even after they dry, if you accidentally touch an area, it will reactivate. So having the images heat embossed just makes my life a little easier. Not only does it look better, but I don't have to worry as much about, like, making sure every spot is very dry before I go on to watercolor the next spot. I can just do my thing and not really worry about it too much. So for me, it was, again, a convenience factor. So I kept all these images really simple. I stuck to that same watercolor palette. I used the Carved Pumpkin, Right Persimmon distress inks. I used pumice stone for my backgrounds, hickory smoke for the animals, and then black soot for the ground. And then these hats from the Crazy Things stamp set, I stamped and heat embossed them separately. Watercolored them in with the same distress inks. I used black soot, and then Carved Pumpkin, and then a tiny little bit of hickory smoke on the little, like, buckle of the bands. And these I had done separately because I actually have the die set for these. I don't have the die set for all of these sets, but I do have them for this one. So the Sizzix die sets that coordinate with these stamp sets are different in the fact that they will die cut right up to the line. Whereas, most coordinating die sets die cut with, that halo around the edge, which I don't mind. But the Sizzix ones do cut right up to the line. And I didn't do it perfectly with the hats, but I honestly didn't worry about it. But you do have to fiddle a little more with them to get them lined up perfectly. So because I had heat embossed them, it was a little harder to line the dies up perfectly. But like I said, I'm okay with it. So I stamped the sentiment. This is from the Pumpkinhead set. And I'm just inking it up with Simon Says Orange Slush ink. Stamped that onto all of these, and then decided I had to add some white splatter because it's watercolor. I need a white splatter. Copic opaque white doesn't leave my desk. I use it on everything. So I put a little bit of that onto an acrylic block, added some water to water it down. I should have got my splatter cubby out for this. It's actually sitting under my desk as we speak, but I would have had to clean off my desk because the thing is quite large, and I just didn't have the energy. So I just splattered it right on my desk here. I got splatter everywhere, but as the minute I stopped filming, I moved all these off to the side to dry, and I quickly wiped all of that white splatter up with a baby wipe. If you wipe it up while it's still wet, you can clean it up really easily. You just got to be quick. So that's what I did, and I was able to clean it all up. So while those were sitting aside to dry all that splatter, I have all my card bases here, and they are 4 1/4 inch square cards from gray cardstock. And then I have this Tim Holtz Halloween craft papery, I don't know, there's all kinds of names for it. I'll have a link to it in the description box below the video. But I have these Halloween papers by Tim Holtz. They were actually in the Simon Says Stamptember Halloween exclusive card kit. But of course you can buy these papers separately. So I chose 3 of the papers for my cards and just trimmed down 3 strips to finish off the insides. And then I'm stamping a sentiment from that Pumpkinhead set, the Happy Halloween sentiment, on the inside of all of these with the same VersaFine ONYX black ink. And then for the actual card fronts here, I'm going to adhere all these die cut hats onto their little characters. And I'm just using some Nouveau adhesive for that. So just adding my adhesive, pressing the hats down. If you were really OCD, which usually I am, but like I said, with these, I just wasn't. You could edge all of these die cuts with a black marker to make them more seamless, but I kind of liked having the hats popped up a little bit, and like it was obvious they'd been die cut, and I liked that because, you know, they were kind of sitting on top of each character. So in this instance, it all just worked. So I adhered all of them, and then I'm just using my Xyron Mega tape runner to adhere all of these squares to squares of those same pattern papers. And once I have those all adhered, I'm going to add adhesive to some craft foam. That's my other latest obsession, and it's a way for me to use up my craft foam, is using that instead of foam tape. So I've got squares of foam tape of just orange craft foam that I'm going to back with that same tape runner. So I just apply several strips of the tape runner, and then I can press that onto the back of all of these card fronts. And then once I have all of the craft foam in place, I can add more of the adhesive to the back of these and adhere them to my cards. And the reason I'm obsessed with this is because the Xyron tape runner has been working amazingly on craft foam. My ATG was never able to really do this, and I don't like fiddling with a bunch of score tape to do this because it takes longer. Whereas this was just quick and easy. So I've been using my tape runner, like my Mega Runner from Xyron, all the time for this, and I'm just loving it. So I'm going to adhere all of these to my card bases, and then decided to pull out my glossy accents, which I haven't used in forever, but I thought that would be really fun to add glossy accents to the eyes of all these characters just to give it that dimension and the gloss. So I'm going to just squeeze that on to all of these, and then I'm going to add one little embellishment, and then I actually set these aside to dry. That was another reason why I rarely used to use glossy accents, because I can never leave well enough alone. I'm always poking at it to see if it's dry. I always wreck it. The amount of cards I've had to fix or redo because I messed up the glossy accents or accidentally rested my hand in it and messed everything up. So I'm getting better. All of this use of like tonic nouveau drops and glossy accents and things, I'm getting much better at setting things aside for a few hours and letting them dry and setting them up out of reach where I can't get at them and where my kids can't get at them. So I added the glossy accents to the eyes, and then I'm using my little Sakura Stardust pen. And I just added a little bit to the buckles on all the hats, as well as to the little dog collar on this one. So hard to see on camera, but in real life, it just gives it that extra little bit of shimmer without being too much. So I added that to those, and then yes, I set these aside on a high shelf for a few hours to let those glossy accents completely dry. And then I've got these orange envelopes from Simon Says Stamp. These are A2 envelopes. These cards will fit perfectly in an A2 envelope. So I decided to just jazz them up a tiny bit and stamp the coordinating little pumpkin images onto the envelopes with that VersaFine ONYX black ink, just to give them that little extra something to tie everything together. And like I said in my previous Halloween video and all of the Halloween videos I've been doing this year, I am giving away these cards. I've just been mailing them out to random winners. I do a little raffle copter widget on my blog and then just mail them out to people just for fun. you know, it's fun to get a card in the mail, especially just a random little happy Halloween card. So if you're interested in that, you can check out my blog post. I'll have it linked below the video, as well as all the supplies. All that info will be in the description box below the video. Thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I appreciate it so very much. And I will see you all very soon in another one. Bye.